All right, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to give everyone an update on the Eton Elite Satellite problem. I've done 2 videos on this. This will be the 3rd. And I've actually written up what I call a letter to Eton on the Elite Satellite issue. And, readers might recall that weeks before Eton shipped out this receiver, I published a commentary in which I asked a key question, which is, would Eton be able to meet the higher standards of the global listening public in 2022 when it comes to new advanced portables? And unfortunately, as we've seen, the answer to that is no. Eton was forced to recall radios that have been shipped to sellers like Universal, Ham Radio Outlet, and others, various Amazon sellers, and others as defects became all too apparent. So a radio that was on the way to me for review, sent directly from Eton, became part of this recall group. But I was recently able to examine a unit that was purchased by a friend of mine here in the Washington, D.C. area. And so I decided to put some comments together in what I call a letter to Eton. And my point here is that if the company takes these points seriously, I think there's still hope that this Elite Satellite can join the ranks of respectable multiband portables here in 2022 after Eton goes back to the drawing board, so to speak, and specifically if Eton continues to cut corners with this receiver and the redesign, then the future is not bright. So here's some main points that I was able to detail when I actually put my hands on one of these units. Number 1, muting while tuning. This is a terrible feature, if you call it a feature at that. This has been one of the most criticized problems in portable receivers for many years. The fact that Eton decided to release a radio with muted tuning is just beyond comprehension. Tuning on the satellite is tragically uncomfortable and frustrating because of this, and this needs to be corrected. All Eton needs to do is take a look at the H501X, the 990X by Texan, and other receivers to know that this is not something you put in a radio, especially one at the $700 price point. Worse, in my view, is worse than the muting problem is what I call poorly implemented passband tuning. In short, this is as if Eton has basically put passband tuning in the Elite Satellite, and it functions not as true passband tuning, but as almost as BFO SSB tuning. On the radio I tested, the passband tuning was actually tuning and changing the frequency. So it was virtually no different from tuning in single sideband with injected tones heard until actually you could try to zero beat, but it was using the passband tuning control. All Eton had to do was take a look at the original E1 receiver or any receiver with well implemented passband tuning to understand how this is supposed to function. So in my view, that was even worse kind of crime than the muted tuning issue. So obviously a BFO is not passband tuning. It's just mind-boggling that problem was allowed to get through and that the receiver was released with this issue. Everyone knows about the lockup on HD and FM. As others have noted, the receiver locked up when tuning high-def signals in FM. This required a reset of the radio. I couldn't even tell what HD subchannels existed on certain frequencies. Things are so bad with that issue, and this needs to be corrected as well. AGC, there's terrible AGC performance on this receiver. Instead of taking a superb feature on the older E1, where you had automatic, slow, and fast modes, designers of the Elite Satellite provided only on and off. And furthermore, on the radio I tested, AGC response when it was on was terrible. There was a long delay before audio returned to any listenable level. But even if one turns AGC off, is there any way to control RF manually? I couldn't find it on this receiver. There's no way to control RF. Again, remember on the E1 you had automatic mode. There was no off mode. So unless I'm missing something, this is a real puzzler. I would strongly recommend to Eton that redesign go to slow, medium, fast, and off options in AGC. There are inconsistent display issues. It's one thing to have a great multicolored display. It's quite another to ensure quality control. On the receiver I tested, the display seemed to be suffering from inconsistent coloration, even kind of pixel issues on the display, and also labels. Every label on the radio should be of consistent, clear, black quality. Here's a big one in my book. Some people may disagree, but I think it's important. The receiver lacks any recalibration function. In the E1, as everyone remembers, you had a small hole which provided access to a kind of a plasticky adjustable potentiometer in the back that you could use an adjustment tool or a fine jeweler's screwdriver to actually fine adjust the zero beat and the frequency calibration. That doesn't exist at all on the Eton Elite. There's no way to easily access what is apparently an oscillator point that's visible on a main board according to a photograph that we have. Doing so requires removing the rear cabinet, and that's something that not everyone's going to want to do to correct calibration. As you can do, by the way, on the 501, the 990X, the PL368, all the Texan receivers have this ability in the software to recalibrate depending upon where you are in the band. So that's a big one for me. One less digit on the readout. Apparently, it seems like Eton has removed one digit. The satellite has turned 10 hertz readout on single sideband and in AM synchronous, but when you're in non-synchronous AM mode, the smallest tuning increment is 1 kilohertz. Why? It's another puzzler. One can only speculate why they decided to do this. On the unit, I inspected and used for about an hour and a half. The telescopic antenna was literally, almost seemed like it was, the segments were falling apart. They were loose. It was clearly terrible quality control. This is a rookie mistake by a company that's putting out radios with telescopic antennas. It's not something we should expect from Eton at this point. FM bleed through to the high frequency bands. This has been commented on by other users. That's an issue Eton needs to address. Bandwidth selections on shortwave and AM, the bandwidth selections seem to be nice, but the widest bandwidth in synchronous mode is only 4 kilohertz. Why that is? Another puzzler. The PAL antenna input, clearly this is a feature that they should have done away with since the E1. They should have gone to either BNC. Even an RCA connector would have been better. And this is a case where moving away from past E1 design would have been preferable. Overall reception quality, I wasn't really able to draw conclusions about overall reception. I had the E1 next to the Elite Satellite, and to my ears the E1 seemed to be quieter than the new receiver. But again, I couldn't be conclusive, so we'll have to wait until sometime in the future when Eton comes back and re-releases the receiver, which we hope will happen, but I'm not sure of the chances of that in the next 6 months, frankly. In general, it appears that not enough was learned from the E1. The excellent features such as the true passband tuning, multi-level AGC were sacrificed on the leap to the Eton Elite Satellite. The puzzling decision was to release the satellite with muted tuning. This indicates insufficient thinking on that issue. Finally, the elephant in the room. With the existing quality control and design issues, there's no way that the Elite Satellite deserves a nearly $700 price point. Even if these problems are corrected, this works out to roughly 2 to 3 times the price of advanced portables by other companies such as Sangean and Texan. And they have included innovations in those receivers such as Bluetooth, micro SD for playing recordings through the speaker, and dual battery capability in the case of the H501. So Eton still has the opportunity to produce a revised version of the Elite Satellite that users would be proud to own and use in 2022 and 2023, but only if it takes the critiques that it's received, certainly by now, to heart. I really urge Eton to reach out to key reviewers such as myself and others, and when it has addressed the issues that I'm mentioning here, by all means, you need to send units out in advance for advanced testing. They didn't do that in this case. They sent out a few units just before they shipped, or as they were shipping the final the initial group of receivers. Eton cannot afford to do that again. They cannot afford a repeat of this kind of a disaster in a release of a major product like this. So hope Eton will act on these suggestions and criticisms. Unfortunately, I think what they did was they thought they could go to DSP with the successor to the E1, make a few changes, throw in multicolored LCD display, things like that, and have it all work out, and it clearly hasn't. And I think if they want to provide the listening community with a receiver that's competitive with the best of what's available today, such as the quite excellent Texan portables, Eton's it's really going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how they went so wrong with the Elite Satellite. So there are some photographs that I took of the unit I tested. And there are a couple of videos, one showing the telescopic antenna issue, the other showing the passband tuning issue. I'll try to get those up on my channel. Overall, a big disappointment for the listening community in this receiver. Again, speaking right to Eton, I would urge you to take all these critiques to heart, back to the drawing board on this. Don't cut corners, because cutting corners created this kind of a situation. The advice that you had received from myself and others, whether here on YouTube or privately and other communications, clearly wasn't followed. This receiver design seemed to be sealed up and wrapped up in a bow before anyone really looked at these issues from members of the listening community, and we're the ones who've been using this equipment for many years. So that's it. If I have any updates or more information, I'll get back to you with yet another video, but as always, thanks for viewing, and we'll see you at another time.